Hey everyone, my name is Martin Tyler and I'm Head of Quality Engineering for FX Digital. I've been involved in test automation really for my entire career, going from automotive to aviation and most recently in connected TV for FX Digital. And I head up the team that creates the test tools and technologies that we're here to talk to you about today. I'd like to introduce you to my colleague Taha.
Hey everyone, my name is Taha and I'm a software engineer here at FX Digital. I've been with the business for about 2 years now and involved with test automation for the whole time. And now I'm responsible for coordinating and maintaining our testing infrastructure. So we're here to tell you a little bit about the story of building up our tech to what it is today.
So first of all, I'd like to tell you all who FX Digital are. Some of you maybe have heard of us before, but probably some of you haven't. So we're a company that specializes in all things front-end development. So we do things from strategy, product, design, development services, QA services, and most recently we've started launching QE, so test automation services as well. We've got a team of about 50 people, and we're mainly located in our London office. We've created apps for the likes of BritBox, S4C, Discovery, ATP Media, to name just a few. And this is a photo, or a couple of photographs, actually a little bit out of date. We've got quite a lot more devices in there now, of our test automation lab. So this is where we run test automation across all of our clients, across all those devices, every single night. And it's at this point, I want to point out to you early as well, we're not using simulators for any of this stuff because if you start to use simulators, it doesn't really behave the same as a real device. So we always stick to the real ones. And like stepping back a little bit, some of you may be asking like, well, why use test automation in the first place for connected TV? Well, this is the reason really on the screen here. You can see there are tons of platforms, and sometimes it feels like there's a new platform coming out every month actually. And then to add, more problems into the mix, people just don't replace their smart TVs and set-top boxes. They keep them for a really long time. If you've got a mobile phone, maybe you'll replace it once every 1 or 2 years. But yeah, people aren't doing that with connected TV. So that leads to one word basically, fragmentation. So yeah, our clients are really trying to get across all these devices, but yeah, it's just not really possible without something like automation. And yeah, before we go into like the story of how we built all this up, I really wanted to show you a little bit of like where we are today, what we're doing this month. And this is a couple of case studies for you. So this is Diane, the first one. We're testing across 16 devices. For that client, we're running around 63,000 test cases every single month, and we estimate that saved around 165 QA days in the last month alone, just for that project. So it's a really good cost and time saving for our clients as well. You can see there we've got like the six or 5 platforms that we test across, but we've got 16 devices. Why is that? Because we're not just testing one device per platform, we're testing many. And here's another one, BritBox. So for these guys, we're testing across 6 devices. We've tested around 41,000 test cases in the last month alone, and 179 QA days saved. So again, really significant savings there. But of course, it's not been easy. Like it's been a journey, and we're here to talk to you about that journey today. And Taha, I think. Oh no, this bit's still me. Yeah, if I want to take you back to a couple of years ago, we had multiple projects in flight. Our QA process was entirely manual. So you can see there, Michael, one of our QAs, clicking buttons, going through and testing those applications. And we couldn't release fast. We couldn't release iteratively. We were probably testing once every kind of couple of weeks. And it really wasn't ideal. And yeah, to be able to do this, really, we had to start making like a lot of sacrifices. What we said to our customers is, right, you want to get onto Samsung and you want to target 7 model years. Well, you can't. You haven't got the budget to test all of those 7. So choose maybe the oldest one, and the newest one. But that's not ideal. All of these devices do behave slightly differently. They've all got pinned different browser versions. So you really need to be testing across all of them. And of course, our clients had high ambitions. They wanted to release on more and more platforms in a faster time to drive their revenues up. They wanted high-quality applications, and of course, FX Digital would never put out anything other than high-quality applications as well. But they had budget constraints, you know. We could have like a warehouse full of QAs doing all this testing, but that's just not financially viable. Like, people aren't going to pay that. And finally, once we were across all these platforms, they wanted the new features when they were coming out not to just be released on one platform at a time. They wanted to be released on everything. So you can imagine that testing is just snowballing there. And we believed that one thing and one thing alone would solve all of our problems, technology. But of course, we soon learned that that's really not the case. Like, if you just get a technology, you put it in place, it doesn't work on its own. You need the people and you need the process to be able to kind of like get the real benefits out of that. So now, yeah, going on to like how we actually built this stuff. And I think, Taha, you've got a lot of memories from that time, right?
Yeah, but first of all, let's get a bit behind the scenes and understand how we got to where we got. First of all, we went to market and we decided to have a look at some of the pre-existing solutions and products that were out there for test automation, but none of them really ended up fitting the bill for what we wanted to do. So we did the only sensible thing, decided to build our own. And yeah, we built this original framework on top of some open source tech, and it was mainly targeted for mobile devices and web browsers, and it kind of worked on some connected platforms as an afterthought. But this left a lot to be desired. And so we decided to iterate. But before we did that, we wanted to put together a set of ethos that we would follow when building out this new framework. What are those set of ethos? Well, first of all, this new framework had to work within a black box, meaning we wouldn't want to make any modifications to the client applications under test to grab any sort of information out of them. We wanted to test the application as the end user receives it, so we can guarantee consistency. It had to be connected TV first, and this meant it had to come with all the features you would want to test a TV application, like remote control functionality, search navigation, and video playback testing. And last but not least, this technology had to be agnostic. Because here at FX Digital, we build our TV applications on top of Lightning.js, which is a technology that renders the whole application as a single canvas element. And this is great for performance reasons on TVs, but we've never shied away from exploring different front-end frameworks. So we wanted that to be there. So crunch time began, really, and we wanted to explore our concept. So we held a hackathon to do this, and we explored entirely vision-based testing. This took about 2 days, and we came away from it with what later became the beginnings of our test automation ecosystem, the image comparison service. And this is our element detection API, able to take a screenshot and an element, and is able to tell you within a reasonable degree of accuracy whether this element is on the page or not. And then following that, we have our real-time audio-video evaluator, which is a mouthful, so we just say RAVE for short. And this is our video playback testing unit, and it's able to tell you, okay, this is a video, how high quality is it, or how low quality is it? And it's able to detect video playback using a set of in-house machine learning models, so it can tell you if the video is paused, playing, or buffering. And then we have our layer of device integrations, which we decided to abstract because, like Martin said earlier, these devices are very fragmented, and there's different protocols to communicate with each one of them. How do we take a screenshot? How do we navigate, press buttons, etc. So this is an additional layer. And then our runtime to containerize all this is our CI/CD pipelines, which we use to ensure that there's a clean environment every single time and there's no other variables affecting these test cases. Back to you, Martin, to just explain a bit about this.
Thanks very much, Taha. So yeah, I think now's a good time to talk to you about the setup that we've got at FX Digital, because it's a little bit different to some other businesses. So we've got multiple quality teams, actually. The first is the quality engineering team. That's the team me and Taha are in. We're responsible for developing, building and supporting the test automation, also the device lab that you saw the photos of earlier, and maintaining those pipelines as well. But of course, when we're building this test automation and when we're thinking about the processes, there's many more teams that are really important as well. Yeah, we really had kind of thought that we'd built this test automation technology and we were really chuffed, but we kind of hadn't really thought about those other teams as much as we should. So first of all, the QA team, a team obviously incredibly important to this process, and they are the team that are actually responsible for the test case design, verifying the log files and checking those defects after on the daily runs that we do, and also the test report delivery as well, delivering the test report to our client and also the other teams. And then also, we mustn't forget the engineering team. So we really need to be thinking about them when designing the processes for test automation. That could be internal to FX or external. But yeah, we always need to be thinking about them. So we'd kind of brought everything together, and we were celebrating, maybe a little bit prematurely, right, Taha? You have a few stories from that time.
I think we like to call this moment the drop to 5%, when we thought everything was in place and working, but that couldn't be further from the truth. In reality, there were a lot of late nights spent logging back on to ensure pipelines were running and devices weren't crashing, and if they were, sort of try to fix them on the fly to make sure things would continue to run stably. So this is really what we're here to talk about. One of the most overlooked aspects of test automation, or automation in general, really, which is the people. So one of the first problems we encountered was the low time and priority given to writing automated test cases. And this resulted in QAs who wanted to use the software simply just not being given the time to do so. And so to address this, what we did was we sent out a survey to see, okay, how does the rest of the business actually see the software working? And it uncovered a few misconceptions, and so we began to educate the key stakeholders and project team members as to the benefits of automation and how it actually saves time in the long run, especially when running long regressions. And then we had to battle with the fact that the projects we had in the business had already begun, and this meant we were really playing catch-up, converting manual test cases to automated. And so this is where we saw the value of creating something called a test case generator. So all of our test cases are written in a syntax called Gherkin, which is human readable. And they tend to follow the same predefined steps. And yeah, off the back of that, we were able to create some boilerplate very quickly for our test case generator. And this helped speed up the process of creating these new automated test cases. Then we realized, well, the results of the automation test runs were really only visible to the QA teams or ourselves by looking through long CI pipeline logs, which, trust me, nobody wants to do. This is why I have a vertical monitor on my desk. So this is where we saw the value of creating simple Slack bots, which would give you an overview of an automation run with what began to pass, what began to fail, and it was visible to the whole project teams, as well as generating static web pages with a nice GUI that would give you an overview of the whole run. But one thing we didn't realize was that our QA team was very highly skilled in manual testing, but not automated. So having a test case generator also benefited them in picking up the sort of syntax of writing these test cases and how they would work together. Now, naturally, as people began using our software, bugs started to come to light because these test cases were used in combinations that we hadn't really thought of before. And so this is where we introduced a new process called test case triage, whereby we sit with QA project team members and we'd analyze what test cases were failing. And we'd try to fix them together or analyze where in the framework they were causing issues and try to fix those bugs. Now, once the test cases were running, we faced another issue, which is our hardware. It began to collapse. And to be fair, we were running everything on a Mac Mini with not enough resource to handle all these containers. And so, Martin, I think you'll remember this photo really, really well.
Yeah, I remember having to go up to our CEO and go, I know our pass rates aren't that great, but we need to spend a significant amount of money on not one, but 2 servers. So yeah, definitely, if you're thinking about implementing a system like this, you'd definitely be prepared to spend a little bit of money on that.
So we had the hardware and we had the process, and things were running. Oh, things were running okay, actually, but they were just taking too long. And so, okay, now it's time to introduce some performance enhancements. And this is where we undertook a massive refactor in the framework to introduce a caching mechanism. This caching mechanism actually ended up saving about 300 minutes of test execution time on certain lower performing device models every single night. So yeah, like I said, once things started running, this time we started to feel the heat, quite literally, when our office air conditioning failed in the middle of January, which isn't comfortable enough as it is, but we had the device lab too to worry about. So we decided to place some temperature sensors in there to monitor how things were behaving. And they started spiking as high as 30 degrees Celsius. And bear in mind, this was the middle of a London winter as well. So even then, our leadership considered moving offices, which is now happening next month, to a new space, which is larger and has better air conditioning with failovers in place for our lab. And I think one of the most important things I want to highlight, and it's something we battle with to this day, is the fact that just connected devices are too locked down. And most manufacturers don't want you to have the kind of information that we need to run our automation off of. And even then, vendors push firmware updates all the time, and that may result in breaking device integrations, like, for example, breaking remote controls integration or whatever. And yeah, 9 times out of 10, these fixes would have to be made on the fly so as not to cause an absurd amount of test cases to fail. And I think that was one of the last issues we come across. And things were running, things were working, and it was great. It was great seeing all the automation in use daily by the QAs. But naturally, our support wasn't scaled to handle the number of requests that began to come in. We had a lot of issues where it wasn't largely bugs, like we were talking about before, but mostly how to use the framework and the software around it. And so, luckily, we had a QA who had recently joined the team, and he was very highly trained in automated testing, and we got him across all the projects very quickly, and he's helped support the teams in integrating the software and using them daily. This also earned him the nickname of the test case doctor as well. And yeah, that was it. I think Martin would like to tell you a little bit about the lessons that we learned from all these issues that we were facing.
Yeah, thanks, Taha. Yeah, before I go into that, I think, yeah, there was like a few moments when we kind of realized that it all came together, right, Taha? So I remember walking into the office one day and looking into the meeting room and seeing the logs for the test automation up on the screen and the project team sitting there and looking at it. That's an event that just wouldn't have happened just a few months before. It really is, you know, a real challenge to get to this point. Also, I remember sitting in a head of department and leadership team meeting and our CEO going to me like, oh, you know, I'm a bit worried about the pass rates on this one particular project, and you know, really monitoring the health of our projects. So yeah, that was the kind of moments we realised that we'd really done it. And then I wanted to share with you guys the statistics. This is for everything, not just one individual project. So right now, this month, we're testing across 37 different devices. We've got a rough automation coverage of between 80 and 85% on all of our projects, so quite high figures. But I think the more exciting ones, we've run 250,000 test cases in the last month alone. That's all on real devices, remember. And the most exciting statistic for me, I think, is that we've saved over 1,000 days of labour of someone having to manually press buttons on a TV. So yeah, really significant time savings there. And we've learned a ton of lessons along the way, and I couldn't talk to you about all of the ones because we just don't have time. But first, I want to share like some key ones with you. First of all, automate as much as possible, not just the test execution, but the writing the test cases, analysing the test cases, because it's only when you can get all of those parts of the puzzle that you'll start to be able to, you know, get the data through and being able to use that really effectively. There's definitely no such thing as set and forget. You know, don't forget that these devices are TV devices designed for consumers in their home, not to be used 24 hours a day, installing in some instances, you know, hundreds of devices are installed and uninstalled. And then build with scale in mind. You know, I think probably, Taha, we didn't really think about how big this would get when we started this process off, and that's come back to bite us a couple of times, and we've really had to kind of like rebuild things. And finally, if there's one thing that I leave you with, and if there's one thing you take away from this presentation today, please let it be this. The people and the process are much more important than the technology alone. We had the technology in the first instance. It didn't really work for us. It's only when we got all those other parts sorted out that it really started to make a difference for our applications. And with that, thank you very much.